So IP culture and IP awareness, what exactly it is, the phenomenal growth of economy in India in the last few years has, made it very vital that IP be generated in India and such IP also be legally protected as well as exploited in India. At the end of the day, if I don't commercially exploit my IP, then, I have not achieved much, though I may have a patent or trademark and all, but I need to commercially exploit it. However, IP awareness among stakeholders has not yet reached a maturity level. In fact, inadequate knowledge about the rights of the individuals to convert their ideas into innovations and consequently protect them can only be termed as low awareness amongst such stakeholders. The lack of awareness is also more about the types of IP, how they apply, the procedures that are involved, as well as the valuation of IP for its complete economic exploitation. One of the major national programs was, that evolved in the country was Make in India initiative, which was launched somewhere in September 2014. The listeners should know that this initiative was built on 4 pillars, being fostering innovation, facilitating investment, enhancing skill development, and protecting intellectual property. Again, these 4 pillars were laid on a very, very strong foundation, which is a slogan, which is called as Make in India, but can sell anywhere in the world. Now, I had this very good experience when I was in Seattle. I'd gone down for shopping and then I was just browsing through certain, things in the market. I saw one very small, leather shoe made for children, maybe about 8 years, 9 years. And then I was turning it around and seeing at the bottom of the sole, I was proud to see Made in India and the symbol of, the Make in India symbol there. So you see, the way how we project ourselves to the world is very important. Then, to Make in India initiative also envisages the involvement of universities to strengthen the Indian economy to reach new heights. And the major objectives of this initiative was raising of the GDP from 15 to 25%. It was a very commendable milestone that we wanted to reach. And apart from that, also create millions of jobs in the country. The aim of manufacturing in the country will lead to skill development and pave way for more investment in R&D to create world-class technological advancements. This initiative also gave educational institutions and universities a greater participation to contribute to the intellectual capitalism of India. So what is creation of IP awareness? Everyone talks of IP awareness, and even I started an organization called as InnoPath, with the tagline, Pathfinders for Innovators, so that I could talk about IP awareness at various places. Now, there is a greater need to create IP awareness in the country, especially amongst the section of the society, more particularly school students, students in college, as well as in the universities, and generally the industrial clusters, right? Then the IP awareness is critical in schools since it helps in shaping the conducive environment to foster creativity and innovation in the minds of students at a very, very young age. Their fertile brain, vibrance, energy, and dynamism will give a fresh perspective to ideas, outlook, and methodology through education. This is more so because fresh minds are up to date with technological know-how, their brains being fertile, their thought process is completely different. They think completely differently from what, people at the age of 50 or 30 or even 40 think about. But to educate, to make the students aware, the faculty of the universities and the schools should be more adept in the IP awareness or the IP regime, which in turn enables them to educate the students on innovation, invention, and the consequential IPs that arise. There has to be IP awareness sessions regularly to teach students about IP and the value of IP that can create. Now, why I'm speaking of the value of IP is the way how children download, certain copyrighted material, movies, songs, that has to be inbuilt in them saying, look, you are actually doing an offense, right? You're copying someone else's hard work. Could be a movie, a write-up, or a novel, or whatever it is. So this has to go to the children at a very young age. Then there is one more area which which I would like to address, since we are addressing the issue of, the universities and educational institutions. They are the research scholars which you find them in universities. Insofar as research scholars are concerned, many are unaware of that their thesis could be a prospective patent. I faced this whenever I went to colleges through ESCI, where research scholars, PhD scholars, they ask me, sir, is my thesis entitled for a patent? I say I can't tell you whether it is entitled for a patent, but definitely you can go in for an application. You file a patent application. Let us see whether it is granted to you or not. There has to be a substantial shift, in their thought process of getting a publication done for their thesis as against filing a patent application. And the universities have to take up, upon themselves to encourage all such research scholars to file patents. This can be done by having IP sessions, teach students about IP and the value of IP that it can actually create. Then, the universities need to develop a standard procedure to identify inventions, assess them for prospective patent, and go ahead with filing of patent applications. Now, not all patent applications will be granted. That's why I always take this example wherever I go, that in an engineering, let us take an engineering college that is there. It has got 400 students in the first year. So allocate a project for 2 students or 3 students put together. Give them a project. First year they will do a lot of study. Second year they will actually do research on it to find how better it can be improved. Third year they may make a prototype. Fourth year they may go ahead and file a patent. Now imagine a college filing 400 patents. Nowadays you can do it because quite recently the government reduced the fee by almost 80% for the educational institutions. Now if 400 patents are filed, all 400 of them are taken up. Let us take almost about 90-95% are thrown out. Even if that 5% is given, out of which 5%, let us take out of the 5%, let us take just about 20% gets to be commercialized. What is the profile the college develops for itself, right? The student, the college, there is a royalty that is coming into the college. The college can actually support further R&D based on this royalty, right? Industry will know that this college has got better patents which can be commercialized. You see, it is a vicious circle, but it has to start at some point. It definitely goes, without saying that for a conducive environment of IPR awareness is very critical. And such awareness must be among students, universities, and research institutions. If there is concerted effort, in bringing IPR awareness, this would definitely lead to creation of a dynamic, a vibrant, and a well-balanced IPR system in India. The creation of intellectual property may have potential for commercialization, which thereby contributes to the professional development of the individuals involved, enhances the reputation of the university or the educational institution or the college, provides expanded educational opportunities for students, and promotes public welfare. Now imagine if this is done in every engineering college in the country. Then creation of IP culture. Now previously we spoke of IP awareness, now culture. Now it is a step after the awareness that emerges, which is called as IP culture. It is that ecosystem wherein everyone understands that there is an IP process running within their business, institution, university, entity, whatever it is, and how the stakeholders within these entities should actively engage with such IP or its processes. There is a necessity to build a strong and a common culture of IP within an institution if the institution wants to foster innovation, progress consequently, and of course create secure returns for the entity and its employees. That's why I was saying commercially exploiting an IP gives a regular income. It is a retirement benefit for anyone, right? For the inventor or for the company. If companies have 10 or 15 patents, out of which at least 2 or 3 are regularly, commercialized and they get a royalty, it is a continued source of income. Then, when the IP system and the IP culture is built, it has to be relevant. Most important is it has to be relevant. It has to be effective. It has to be legitimate and should be leading path for the successful crystallization of any form of an IP. Now, IP culture also involves how the entity or the person has to assess when an IP is an incentive and when it is not an incentive. So don't waste your time on something which you know is already there, or don't waste your time trying to improve something else. Do a lot of research to know where you can actually start doing research for an IP. Now, awareness program on regular basis are very relevant. The IP culture should involve such intrinsically demanding analysis and cannot be achieved by glossing over text. You just don't read textbook literature and that doesn't give you an achievement. Literature or simply having conferences. Regular awareness workshops, seminars should be conducted among schools, universities, industries, and such programs, and the information to be made aware of should be tailored separately for schools, separately for universities, and separately for industry. This is very, very necessary because the level of understanding varies at every stage. Then, not only should the awareness program talk of invention, innovation, IP protection, but also should have sensitization programs highlighting the ill effects of piracy, infringement, duplication, as well as serious consequences emerging from enforcement agencies like police, customs, as well as effective judicial orders that can be obtained from the judiciary. The economics of valuation and the consequent pricing also matters. It's also a very integral part of the IP culture. This concerted effort is necessary for maintaining the IP balance and a strong IP regime. Now, what are IP culture elements? There are some elements that I wanted to discuss. So the first element is approval and engagement. The IP approval and engagement happens when it is felt that there is sufficiency to attempt to use the system, right? That is why in the previous thing I said, go through a lot of literature, find for yourself or find a road for yourself where you can do a research, right? If there is already research on, let us take calcium hypochlorite, which can be manufactured at a lower price, I don't think it is really worth doing that research. Get into something else different. The approvals and engagement are generally involved once when there is a sufficient attempt to use a system, which means a system is already identified and engagement of such a system is validated. It should be identified, engaging the system, there has to be a validation. Now the second is awareness. IP awareness is sufficient to make effective use of the system. Sufficiency to make effective use of the system arises when there is some amount of awareness that has crept in, and this gives the stakeholders enough knowledge for them to proceed with, right? Enough knowledge. The sufficiency of the awareness. Then IP is a tool for economic and social and cultural development. The third IP culture element is system related resources. Now, what do this mean? Organizational resources supporting use of systems. Now you have the vPost global database. It can be accessed anywhere. Then you have general global databases which can be accessed. IP searches, the law itself, the IP law, which constitutes the act, the rules, the forms, the guidelines, the timelines, the manuals, and the limitation periods. All these are very important, right? Then due diligence, reporting and ascertaining value, which is very important. How do I do a due diligence of what I have, what I need to acquire, what I need to assign, right? How much to acquire, how much to assign, right? Technology transfer agreements. All this come under due diligence. Then digital rights management systems under the copyrights, which is very important, and competitor search. Now these are IP culture elements. Then now I'll give you an example of Volkswagen, which acquired the assets of Rolls-Royce, motor car, for about 780 or 90 million. Now, what happened when this acquisition happened? The irony of the acquisition deal was, till the closure of the transaction, Volkswagen was not aware that it had merely acquired the factory, facility and rights to make and sell Rolls-Royce and Bentley vehicles for a period of 5 years, right? And also rights to use the marks Bentley and Rolls-Royce and not the ownership over the name and brand Rolls-Royce. Apparently, now what happened? Apparently, the brand Rolls-Royce was owned by parent company Rolls-Royce PLC by virtue of prior agreements, and the parent company was more interested in granting licenses and subsequently transferring ownership to a competing group, BMW, right? Volkswagen, BMW, both from the same country, Bavarian Motor Works and Volkswagen rather. Then after 5 years from the period of acquisition, BMW became the exclusive rights holder of Rolls-Royce brand and acquired rights to manufacture Rolls-Royce vehicles. By not being careful, Volkswagen, by not being careful about assessing the state of intellectual property ownership relating to Rolls-Royce, Volkswagen paid superfluous amounts for returns it received from the deal. This case is one of the best examples, albeit it is a glaring and an extreme one. It is one of the best examples to show how undermining the role of IP due diligence during commercial transactions can lead to unprecedented losses to the buyers and investors. Then, the existing international system of IP protection offers advantages for business. International registration procedures like PCT or the Madrid system allow firms to protect and exploit their IP assets in multiple countries through a single application procedure, ultimately helping companies to recoup their investment in innovation. This is a very standard practice. You will see this standard practice more in pharmaceutical industries, where they spend real lot of money in developing a molecule to come to the stage of being sold as a product. It almost takes about 8 years plus another 2 years, 3 years or 5 years for human trials. Then once when it comes onto the shelf to be sold as a product, right? There is a lot of investment that goes in. Now, inventions and innovation culture in university. I'll just go through this. Now, invention and innovation culture in university. What is invention? It literally means finding out something which has not been found by others for the first time, right? It is not a discovery. If someone in the West said there are 9 planets, it was a discovery because in the southern Indian state of Tanjore or Tanjavur, as it is called in Tamil, you will find the Suryana temple, the temple for sun, and rest of the rest of the planets, all put in a particular, a position within about say 40 or 50 kilometers. Now this was built 5,000 years back, and I really do not know how anyone in the West can claim there are 9 planets and this is what is this, right? Then, in the patent parlance, invention would mean that there is no prior art existing with regard to the said invention anywhere in the world. Now, when I say prior art, anywhere in the world, not just in India, right? That's why when we do the prior art search, we go through various databases across the world, and we give an opinion to the client saying, look, these are all the competing patents. These are all their claims. This is what your invention disclosure is all about. And this is how we compared the claims. Claims mapping has been done. And these are your prospects of filing a patent application or getting a patent. Now, what is innovation? A new idea or a method which may relate to an existing technology, invention and innovation culture in universities, right? Invention and innovation culture in universities. Now, I'll give you some examples. The Center for Nanotechnology and Advanced Biomaterials, School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, and the School of Chemical and Biotechnology of Shastra University, they both came together, and they undertook a project in 2014, and this project was something to identify biomarkers which could help decode the main cause behind the onset of metabolic disorder for diabetes. Now, biomarkers, you'll find it in so many other areas, especially for cancer, for TB, you'll find these biomarkers. Now, both this came together. They wanted to find a biomarker for an onset of a metabolic disorder, diabetes. Now, you know what diabetes is. Almost, most of the population, at least, the diabetes is one of those diseases which has affected majority of the people. Now, the second example is IIT Madras team, which comes up with this device that generates potable water out of thin air, right? Which is this is something phenomenal. Out of thin air, potable water, it is generated. Now, water is derived from the AWGs using three-step procedure. First, air enters the contraption through a filter situated in front of the machine. Secondly, the moisture in the filtered air gets condensed on the nano-engineered surface present inside the machine. And lastly, the water that is collected is subsequently purified and mineralized to deliver the drinking water. Now, I recently also was looking at some program on the, Discovery Channel, and then there was this, huge net in the Andes mountain, in South America, where, the local population, which were inside the Amazon forest, in order to get drinking water, they had put this huge nets, which has got wires, across, say about 1 inch square or ½ inch square. So what happens? All the moisture that is there in the air condenses onto these wires, and they slowly trickle down. It comes, drop by drop, then it is a trickle, then it runs like a tap water. So literally they are able to collect about 6,000 to 7,000 liters of drinking water every day. Now this, I don't know whether you can call it as a jugaad, but definitely this is also an invention culture. Now, satellite designed by a student from Shastra University, which is still awaiting a launch from NASA. The satellites are fabricated with polyethylamide thermoplastic resin using the additive manufacturing technology of 3D printing. Now, 3D printing has come to such an advanced stage that in one very poor African nation, a house was built by using 3D printing. Anyone who's having a LinkedIn account would have seen that, 3-minute video of a 3D printing of a house. Right now, these are the advancements that are happening. Now, what does a student have here? Every student of science on the path to make a world a simpler place for humans. Every student who aspires to become Albert Einstein or Nicholas Tesla or Thomas Alva Edison or even Rachon Das from 3 Idiots should be aware of protecting their inventions. If you are not aware of protecting your inventions, it is free for all. Anyone can take it, anyone can use it. You are the loser. And if you don't get what you are supposed to get, it is definitely a loss. Now, it is crucial to understand that which IP protection is awarded to each intellectual creation. Not many people know this. Some of my clients come to me and say, sir, I want a patent for my logo. Or they say, I want a, what is called as, can we get a patent for, this book, right? So you should know what is what. In fact, in one matter where I appeared somewhere in Uttar Pradesh quite recently, the judge, I don't know whether he asked me very, very innocently or he said, Ramkumar, why don't you get a patent for your trademark? That is the level of understanding in the judiciary. Actually, sorry to say that. Magistrates, they don't understand how it has to be done. Copyright, criminal matters. When should the material be seized? When should the seized material be released? Right? This needs, when I say this culture of invention, innovation, teaching, and all this, it also applies equally to the judiciary. It is crucial to understand which IP protection is awarded to each intellectual creation. Most importantly, the essentials of each IP protection needs to be understood by future scientists. Intellectual property can convert ideas into strategic business advantage, and universities have a responsibility to use all available resources to ensure utilization of intellectual property and materials for the public good and to expedite their development and transfer. Concurrently, the rights and privileges of innovators must be preserved so that their initiatives and entrepreneurship may be encouraged, stimulated, and rewarded. Now, the next point is research basis for invention. You should learn from the past, create the future. Research and invention are interrelated. Now, what is learning from the past? What already is discovered and learnt is a learning process. Learning from past also includes going through technical journals, patent databases maintained by patent offices, other public domain information, other public domain records, other public domain, material which is very, necessary. So what is already discovered and found is a learning process. That is learning from the past. Creating the future is what is to be invented from the learnt past is to create the future, right? This could include prior art searches, which are also called patentability searches, which is generally done to see that there is no similar tech existing. Any other searches under the patents which you are doing like FTO or even technology landscape, whatever it could be. So this is to create the future. How do you create a future? First understand what is existing. Then you find the patent application, you are creating a future. Now, because of the learning from the past and creating a future, research and inventions are both interrelated. Research cannot be separate from invention, or invention cannot be separate from them. Both have to go hand in hand and they need to be interrelated. Now, educate to innovate. Is education a must for innovation? You have this Manshuk Prajapati, Ramya Jose and Tirupati Rao. I would like to discuss this very important, inventions made by people who did not have education or who had very low level of education, right? That's why I said educate to innovate. Is it a must? No. None of them had a fancy master's degree. Or is a fancy master's degree required for innovation? Or are innovations only restricted for the educated and the elite? Does every innovation require huge financing and heavy infrastructure? Our sir, Ravinder Garu was talking about certain indigenous inventions. Now, many of us don't give a concentration there. Most of us are very interested in getting a patent for a molecule or for a chemical combination or for how many indigenous inventions have just gone by without having been, given the thought, yes, this could be a prospective patent. Now, Manshuk Prajapati was one such gentleman. This happened when he was a potter by trade in Gujarat, and when the Gujarat earthquake came, he saw a picture in the paper of a broken fridge, right? So immediately it struck him, why don't I make a fridge for a poor man? You know what he did? He made a fridge out of clay, wherein food could be stored for 2 or 3 days. He didn't stop there. He went ahead and manufactured a clay non-stick frying pan. Now, initially he was doing it as a cottage industry. Then he converted this into a manufacturing unit, right? Actually, machines being involved in manufacturing it. Now, this is a very classic example of what I call as seeking an opportunity in adversity, right? Innovation, if you are seeking an opportunity in adversity, then you have done something great. Then thus, Prajapati had the art, improvising and indigenous solutions of handmade clay fridges to industrially built clay fridges. So was he educated or was he a graduate from an Ivy League university? No. But does its creation cater to the consumers who cannot afford a regular fridge? Definitely yes. A clay fridge which anyone could afford. Then the second, story is about Ramya Jose, one of the twin sisters and a school-going girl who developed a washing machine out of recycled bike parts. This definitely I would call is a jugaad. It's a term applied to a creative or innovative idea, providing some quick alternate way of solving or fixing a problem. That is a jugaad. Jugaad is very famous in India, especially in North India. Right? Now, when this girl, what gave her the idea? It is when her twin sisters were she and twin sister was tasked of, doing the family's household course of washing the thing when their mother fell ill. Right? Then they went ahead and did this. Right? Then the third one is Tirupati Rao, a person who is to climb electric poles to change fuse wires, connect wires and all that. He designed a shoe through which he could climb the pole, and that shoe could bear a weight of 100 kgs. Right? An uneducated man's contribution to the society. Now, similarly, you have a coconut climbing machine in Kerala, which can simply climb a coconut very safely. Coconut can be harvested and brought down. Now, when I'm talking of all this, this is jugaad, something which evolves as a necessity. Necessity is, necessity is the mother of invention. Then, apart from this, what is it that the university has to look? It has to look into the development of a IP policy, right? Policy on ownership and management of research data. Who owns it? How is it managed? Where should it be stored? Who has an access to it? To what extent can an access be done? Right? Can it be reproduced again? All this, there has to be a policy. Policy on misconduct in scholarly activity. I put this sentence very specifically here because right now I'm dealing a case for a, for a doctorate, for a person who's doing a doctorate in Canada, where his invention was actually taken away by, the professor there, along with two other professors. They filed an application. Now he has filed an application to remove their name. So I have engaged a lawyer in the US and that's being fought. It's a very, hands-on throttle dispute that is happening. Then policy on financial conflict of interest in research. Who has to do the finance? To what extent has it to be done? Should it be recovered from the person who's doing research, or should it be a part of an investment by the university? Then management of equity interest in startup companies. To what extent equity interest should be managed? Suppose the university gets into a league with a startup company. So how are they going to manage their equity interest? Who's going to have how much of equity? What happens tomorrow when the patent is transferred? How much of money has to come into the university? What is the royalty issue? All this has to be looked into. Then material transfer agreements are something which we have never had any idea about, or we have never put it into practice. Now, material transfer agreements are very important. See, as a lawyer, I realize one thing in this long years of, practice, documents speak for themselves. The moment you have documents, at least you have built a wall of security around you. Now, how it will be breached, when it will be breached is not your problem. But you have a wall of security around you. Then acknowledgement of intellectual property policy and assignment, which is extremely important because once an IP is developed, then there has to be an acknowledgement of it by the university, by the people concerned, the research department, or the people who assisted the person. This is very important. Now, for a minute, I'll just touch on the patents because I was asked by Dr. Reddy Garu to look into it. Now, the central government, recently introduced an amendment in 2021. It reduced the fee for patent filing and prosecution for educational institutions by 80%, which is quite a huge margin. The move has been taken to strengthen innovation and creativity in the knowledge economy. Very good move. The high patenting fees was one sort of an hindrance for educational institutions in getting newer research and technologies patented, and hence worked as an disincentive for the development of newer technologies. Now, varied amendments were carried out to the Patent Act. Most of you are aware, right from 2016 to 2021, and most of them were aimed at removing procedural inconsistencies, one, and unnecessary steps, two. This had helped expedite the grant. Quicker grants were happening, expedite the grant registration and final disposal of the process. And these are made very, very efficient, user friendly and compatible for e-transactions. Now, but still, according to me, much more needs to be done. Now, what is that much more that needs to be done? Since Raghavendra Garu is there, I can put forth this to him. A separate examination team should be constituted to expedite examinations of applications filed by universities and research scholars. Now, some of the European countries have this practice and also have a policy to grant a patent within 1 year. Even by 2019, we had only 319 patents filed by the universities and they were granted to 10 top universities. Now, if we have something like a grant of a patent within a year, in fact, I would definitely canvass the process that was there in South Africa, where once you file an application, patent is granted to you, it is given to you on a platter. If that can be done, much more better. Let it be put to test in the public domain. Let it be put to test before the courts. Let it be fought out. There is absolutely no problem. If no one is interested in your patent, at least the patentee will survive with some royalty. He will do something, he will commercially exploit it. Then the canvas of IP policy and the practical aspects of filing IP, patents for universities and colleges, they need a drastic change. Now, this archaic thought process of research scholars, should change. They should say, my document should be published. It should change from publishing their thesis as article to publishing their thesis as a patent publication. This is extremely important. This thought process has to go through. Then universities should think of letting out their research facility for prospective innovators, of course, with agreed terms and ownerships and royalties and other conditions. Now, in 2019, an university-friendly policy was unveiled by AICT. Most of the people who are there in the university know about it. The terms of intellectual property, ownership, management, technology, licensing, institutional startup policies. It was mandatory for academic bodies to share patent rights with the researcher if the facility of the institutions are used while developing a product or a technology. Reduce the fee, give a better what is called as space or a wider canvas for the inventor, so that he gets encouraged to do better inventions and then do. Of course, yes, the college has to give the facility of research and all, because only colleges and universities can afford it. Then there also has to be a handoff policy, which you generally see in US, where the US and the research, where the universities and research institutes allowing the inventor and responsibility for determining what disposition is to be made of the product of his research effort should be adopted, or in the alternative, the control suggested by AICT should be adopted. So free hand disposition, handoff policy. You do what you want. You produce the product, go to the commercial thing, get it commercialized. But you pay us this much. We will not interfere in the way how you are commercializing it. We will not interfere in the way of the way how proprietary is exchanged or changing hands. But this is the royalty we need. That is called as the hands-off policy, which is generally adopted in the US. Now, to conclude, I need to, I have this few points. Promoting IP culture and educating the youth in universities through IP awareness programs need to be looked as an inevitable task, right? You need to produce and disseminate knowledge at a very, very continued effort. It has to be, it has to be persistent. And the task of institute, it needs to achieve advancement and progress, which it can boast of. Every institute has to do this. The other important reason would be that the consequence of such awareness program, the youth develop a fresh outlook and a methodology and contribute to the nation's intellectual capitalism. Now, though their inventions, through their inventions, the university will do good to capitalize on the potential and creativity of students from universities and educational institutions. And in fact, their contribution should be viewed that they are creating better and secure IP regime for the future of India. That is the That is the view that the universities have to take, the research institutes have to take. Now, promoting IP culture in university and other higher educational institutions, concessions by government, a handoff policy by the research center could be the only route where the youth could become the leaders and the champions of innovation and IP. The sooner this is realized by the universities, educational institutions, the governments involved, the stakeholders, everyone have to realize this. The resultant would be a very, very robust IP regime for the country. So I will end my session with this.